everyone, happy Tuesday. We are going to focus on slope and writing equations in slope-intercept form this week. Today's assignment is going to be one through Google Forms, whereas tomorrow, Wednesday's assignment is going to be the Delta Math. I switched those around just for this week since it was a 4-day week. Okay, so throughout this video, I am going to give you 2 word of the days. You want to make sure that you write those 2 word of the days down because those are the first 2 questions on your Google Forms sheet. And that's how I am going to keep track of you being able to watch the videos. Okay, so the first 3 problems in the Google form is being able to write an equation in slope-intercept form for the graphs. Now, remember, slope-intercept form is the equation y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. Okay? Now, like I said, these are like problems 1, 2, and 3 in Google Forms. So, all I need to do for both of these graphs is to identify the slope. When you're graphing, slope is rise over run, and identify the y-intercept. And your y-intercept is the point in which your line crosses the y-axis or the vertical axis, okay? Now, let's find our slope. In order to find the slope, I'm going to zoom in here. You want to place 2 dots on the red line, okay? Now, those 2 dots have to touch the corner of the grid perfectly. So I'm going to put a dot there at the 5. And I'm going to put a dot there. Okay, now, when you're counting slope, you do rise, which is up and down, over run, which is left and right. Okay, I am going to start from the bottom left point. In order to calculate my slope, I have to count the blocks of rise. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So m equals 10 over your run. So I have to move to the right. So it's going to be positive 1, 2, 3. Now that slope does not simplify. Okay. So m is 10 over 3. Now b is your y-intercept. So where does your line cross the y-axis? Now that's a really bad line there, but it's right there at b is 5. So I'm going to take those 2 pieces of information and I'm going to plug them into my formula. So my equation is going to be y equals 10 over 3x plus 5. Okay. Remember, when you're writing equations, you have to remember to have the y equals as well. All right. So let's look at this next example. Same situation, you want to write an equation in slope-intercept form. So let's find the slope first. Put 2 points on the red line. Both points have to be on the corner of a grid. So I'm going to put a point there at negative 2, 2. And I'm going to put a point at 0, negative 5. Now, just as a side note, if you try to put a point right there, notice how the line is not going through the corner of the grid there. That would not be a good point. Okay. So let's go ahead and count the slope. So I'm going to start at my leftmost points. I'm going to start I'm going to start up here, and in order to go to the bottom right point, I have to travel down, and I'm going to count the blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So slope is down 7, which is a negative 7, and to the right 1, 2. Okay, so m equals negative 7 over 2. That does not simplify. And then your b, or your y-intercept, is where your line crosses the y-axis, which is this point right down. B is negative 5. Now I'm going to take those 2 pieces of information and plug them into your slope-intercept form here. So my equation is y equals, my m was negative 7 over 2, x, my b is minus 5. Okay. Now, the first word of the day. Now, you write this down. I'm not going to write it down because I don't just want people scrolling through the video trying to find it. So my first word of the day is red. Okay, the color red. So in the first blank for the word of the day, the first word of the day is red. Okay. Now, find the slope given 2 points. These are problems 4 and 5 on the video. Now, when you're given 2 points, you want to use the formula for slope. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, where you label your points every time. x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay? Now, you're going to take those values and you're going to plug them into the formula that I just circled there. Okay? So here we go. y2 goes in the y2 spot, minus y1 goes in the y1 spot. So it's going to be 0 minus negative 8. Make sure you use parentheses around negative numbers. All over, and then we got x2 minus x1, or negative 3 minus 1. You want to put parentheses around negative numbers. Okay. Now, you just type the top into the calculator just the exact way it is. 0 minus negative 8 is 8. Negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4. And then you always want to simplify 8 over negative 4 simplifies to be negative 2. Okay. If you were to type this in a calculator, you would actually have to put the negative with the top number. So negative 8 ABC4 would simplify it. The negatives in the bottom don't work. Okay, same thing for question B. Let's go ahead and label our ordered pairs, x1, y1, x2, y2, and let's plug them into the formula. So the formula is y2 minus y1, or 2 minus negative 4, over x2 minus x1, or 6 minus 4. Just type left or right into your calculator. 2 minus parentheses negative 4 is 6, over 6 minus 4 is 2, and simplify always. 6ABC2 simplifies to be 3. All right. And the next set of questions is writing an equation from standard to slope-intercept form. This is going to be like problems 6 and 7. So your step 1 is add or subtract your x term. Step 2 is divide all numbers, by number in front of y. And then step 3 is to simplify. Okay, so this is just like solving an equation. So I'm going to draw my vertical line there. Step 1 says to add or subtract the x term on both sides. So I am going to subtract the positive 9x from both sides. Okay. Sorry, give me 1 second here. Let me just, for some reason, it doesn't want to zoom. There we go. So I'm going to do subtract 9x. On the left it cancels. I drop down a positive y equals. And then you always want to squeeze that negative 9x or whatever that term is in front of the constant there. And that constant is a positive 4. Okay. Now, step 2 says divide all numbers by the number in front of y. Well, there's an invisible 1 in front of y, but that really, since it's a 1, you don't really have to divide everything by it. So that would be our final answer there. For question B, there's my line. Step 1, add or subtract the x term. Well, it's positive x, so I'm going to subtract a 1x on both sides. On the left, it cancels. You drop down a negative 3y equals, and then the x term goes in front of the constant. So I got negative 1x, and that's a positive 3. Okay. Step 2 says divide all numbers by the number in front of y. So the number in front of y is negative 3. So I'm going to divide every single piece by that negative 3. The y drops down, and then you want to simplify the fractions. Negative 1 over a negative 3 gives us a positive 1/3 x, and then a positive 3 divided by a negative 3 is a negative 1. And there's our equation there. And then the last question says, what is the slope of the line? This is just like problem 8, and it's kind of like those first examples that we did. Slope of a line is rise over run. Positive up, negative down, negative left, positive right. Now, the only tricky thing is to make sure you put dots on the corners of the grid. So notice where I just put a dot there, that was on the corner of the grid, and another dot through the corner of the grid there. Okay. Now, you want to do rise over run, so I'm going to start at my leftmost point and count blocks rise. So I'm going to count 1 up, which is a positive 1, and then my run is 1, 2, so my slope is 1/2. 1/2 doesn't simplify. Okay. If, for example, you put a dot at -2, 2, and then like 4, 5, you would still do the same thing. You would rise 1, 2, 3, and you would run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which would actually simplify to 1/2. So always simplify. Okay. Now, the second word of the day is going to be video. Okay, the second word of the day is going to be video. So make sure you jot that down. That's going to be the second question. So your second word of the day is video. All right, last one here. Put two dots on the grid. So I'm going to put one at 2, 2, and I'm going to put one at 3, 1. Okay. I'm going to start from the leftmost point. That's not a good color. I'm going to start from the leftmost point there. And in order to get to my bottom right point, I have to go down 1. So M is -1 because I went down. And then I have to travel to the right 1 block. So my slope, -1, ABC1, simplifies to be -1. All right?